VSO Roundtable. We always have the privilege in DC on a regular basis of having our national veteran service organizations meetings where we can learn about what the priorities are, the challenges that our veterans face, and the solutions that are being suggested by our veterans. From time to time, we have the opportunity to come together in our district. COVID has prevented us from doing that actually, but today we have the privilege of doing it virtually, and frankly, it gives us an opportunity to have our distinguished chair, Mark Takano, with us. We extend an actual invitation to you at some other time, Mr. Chairman, but I know how busy you are at this writing legislation every day, being busy on the floor of the House, passing legislation and looking down the road for our veterans. We're very proud of Mark Takano as a Californian, of course, but as the chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee. It is his mission. It is his mission. He knows his goals. He knows his challenges. He knows his possibilities. And our members highly respect the opportunities he affords all of us to help our veterans. As the saying goes, on the battlefield, we leave no soldier behind. When they come home, we leave no veteran behind. I keep saying that because it is in our DNA. It's just the way it is. Now, the chairman knows the esteem with which I hold Michael Blecker. Been working with him for years. In fact, I think it's now become decades. I can't remember a time when Michael was not giving us guidance. He serves our fellow vets with Swords to Plowshares, and that's where I met him in the beginning. And across America is an advocate for veterans and their health. I had the privilege of appointing him to the commission that he served on that dealt with veterans' health, and now to the Air Commission. But the president hasn't, because we haven't received the Republican nominations, that hasn't been fully appointed yet. But Mr. Chairman, Michael Blecker is really a force of nature. I've seen his little children grow up. We owe his family so much because he has spent so much time with such dedication to our veterans. So here we are at this time. As I say, Michael was served on the VA Commission on Care. I was very proud of his rejection of some of the proposals that were put forth there. Right now, though, for us in the House, this is a time that is important, and we have an extensive agenda. Last year, the American Rescue Plan delivered $17 billion to help address vets' healthcare needs and help homeless vets experience homelessness to achieve housing. Mr. Takano was very instrumental in getting those billions of dollars in that legislation. We got millions of vets vaccinated with Save Lives Act, which Mark Takano once again was crucial in crafting. 2 weeks ago on the floor, we passed the Guard and Reserve GI Bill Parity Act, which ensures every day that our reserve members and National Guard heroes serve in uniform, that counts toward their benefits. And we'll have some questions about that, Mr. Takano. But thank you for bringing that legislation to the floor. That was 2 weeks ago. Just last week, we passed Ensuring Veterans Smooth Transition Act, which automatically enrolls eligible veterans in VA healthcare, expanding care to 58,000 more vets each year. I'm particularly excited about a piece of legislation that Chairman Takano, working with other members of the House Democratic Caucus, and we hope it will be very bipartisan, is legislation honoring our pact. This is a bill that addresses the burn pits, just injustice of it all, that many of our men and women in uniform were exposed to these burn pits, have suffered consequences from it. And I know that Mark will give us more about that, and you may have more questions about it, but this has risen to the level of the very highest priority. All of these bills are, but this one costs maybe it costs a lot of money. It will cost us a lot of money to do. So, but we have to do it. I'll talk more about it later, but first I just want to thank our VSOs for all that you do to accommodate the needs, for channeling the priorities of our vets. And I have a vet that I'm exchanging presents at Christmas. He's 103 years old. He lives at the Veterans at Fort Miley out here. He's a dear friend, but as energetic a vet, running up and down, not running, going in the wheelchair up and down the halls. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to go see him the past couple of years because of COVID. But the patriotism of our veterans is never to be exaggerated, always to be appreciated and rewarded. And with that, I'm pleased to present to you our distinguished chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee, Mr. Mark Takano. Mark came to Congress as an educator, served on the Education and Labor Committee, still does. Our children and their future is something that he has always had as a high priority. And how that comes together with our veterans is we owe them, our veterans, a future worthy of their sacrifice as we invest in meeting their needs and the needs of our children. Mr. Takano, Mr. Chairman, welcome.
Well, let me make sure I'm unmuted. I am unmuted, yes. Well, first of all, good afternoon. And I want to thank Speaker Pelosi for inviting me to join you all today. The honor is really mine. And as chairman of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, it is vital for me to hear from veterans across the country, and I'm eager to hear your perspectives. I know firsthand what a strong advocate you have in Speaker Nancy Pelosi. For decades, she has tirelessly fought for veterans to have access to the care and benefits they deserve. And this year, she has made that commitment abundantly clear once again. It's still January, but thanks to Speaker Pelosi's push, we have already passed two major bipartisan bills that she's already described to you for our veterans through the House of Representatives. In one of this year's first floor votes, we've passed Representative Levin's Guard and Reserve GI Bill Parity Act with strong bipartisan support. I got to tell you, Representative Levin was going to be happy with just 20 Republican votes, but we got over 60 Republican votes for Mr. Levin's Parity Act. The National Guard and Reserve service members have stepped up time and time again to serve our nation when we needed them, especially over the past 2 years. But right now, they don't have equitable access to the GI Bill benefits that they've earned. If these service members can do their part day in and day out while holding down civilian jobs and squeezing in time to take care of their families, then the least we can do is ensure each day they spend in uniform counts towards their benefits. I know this earned educational benefit will only make our country stronger, and I eagerly await the Senate passage of this vital bill. Additionally, last week we passed my eVest Act, which will simplify the transition process and take steps to prevent veteran suicide by automatically enrolling eligible service members in VA healthcare during their transition out of the military. We know that the moments following a transition can be very stressful and particularly risky for new veterans in terms of mental health. And one of the most glaring gaps in accessing high-quality VA healthcare is the enrollment process. My eVest Act will close that gap and prevent veterans from having to opt in to VA care later and attempt to navigate a new bureaucracy on their own. Frankly, we shouldn't be trying to hide VA care from those who've earned it. Veterans and stakeholders have been advocating for this change for years. And I'm humbled and grateful that we have a speaker like Nancy Pelosi, that we are able to bring that goal one step closer to reality. Now, my committee is laser focused on another major issue. And my top priority for this Congress is this: addressing toxic exposure once and for all. Last Congress, I was proud to lead the effort to pass the Blue Water Navy Vietnam Veterans Act. It was a major achievement, and I'm grateful for Speaker Pelosi's help in getting it done. But it took more than 4 decades. Many toxic exposed veterans don't have time to wait. For too long, Congress and the Department of Veterans Affairs have been slow to act on toxic exposure, citing high costs or lack of absolute scientific proof. The result is a broken promise and a disability benefit claims process that is cumbersome and a process that places the burden to prove toxic exposure on veterans themselves. The Honoring Our Pact Act can and will change that. My bipartisan bill will finally recognize toxic exposure as a cost of war by providing access to VA healthcare to over 3.5 million veterans exposed to toxic substances. It will presume that a veteran who served in a specific theater at a specific time was exposed to toxic substances rather than forcing veterans to prove this themselves. Crucially, it will also streamline VA's review process so that Congress doesn't have to keep intervening. With the support of 9 veteran service organizations and over 70 co-sponsors, this legislation has the momentum. And Congress just needs to find the will to do what is right. I'm grateful to have the Speaker's commitment to move my bipartisan legislation and the Honoring Our Pact Act through the House very, very soon. I know that together we can get this done. And I'm looking forward to a productive conversation today about what more we need to do to ensure all veterans can access their earned VA care and benefits. And again, it's my honor to be here, Madam Speaker, and to be here with all of the VSOs and veteran advocates we have here today at this roundtable.
Very much. As you are, I'm sure, aware, we respect the views of our veterans here, and so far they have been very constructive, and I'm sure they always will be, but very constructive in terms of VA health and the rest. I just want to say something personal to all of you. Long time ago, like 40 years ago, when I first became chair of the California Democratic Party, one of the first things I did was to go down to LA and sit in with the veterans who were on a hunger strike because of Agent Orange. I was there with Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory was telling them, you're endangering yourself on a hunger strike unless you keep hydrating, keep drinking fluids, take showers to get the poison off you, because that's what happens when you starve, and the rest. But that was 40 years ago. And as you said, Mark, Mr. Chairman, it took 4 decades for us to get this legislation. How could it be? The fact that you had to prove that you were there exposed and that whatever you had was connected, forget that. Forget that. That's what this legislation is so wise about. You're sick, you were there, it's over. That's it. And so in any event, I thank you for not only passing the Blue Water Naval bill, as you said, 4 decades later. How could it be? How could it be? Well, it won't be as we go forward for the toxic exposures that our veterans, our men and women in uniform are exposed to. Now I have the privilege of, and by the way, I just want to comment on what you said about mental health. The mental health piece of this, as we go forward in the appropriations process, we will have $13 billion for mental health care in our bill, an increase of just about $3 billion. And again, more than $2 billion for homeless vets. Thank you, Mark Takano, for your advocacy, because it can't get in that bill unless the appropriator is leads the way. So now my honor to introduce a hero to me and to so many of us. Where are you, Michael? I know you must be there. There he is, Michael.
I am.
But as I said earlier, I've seen close up and constantly his leadership for our veterans. He has led Swords to Plowshares for decades, demonstrating the respect that he has for our veterans, not just their immediate veterans needs, but other things that relate to homelessness or housing, as well as continuum of services of other things that veterans need. And and serving his fellow vets in our city, and really as a model to the country, has been something, a joy to behold. So he's been an advocate for veteran-centered healthcare, and he made our city proud on the when he served, as I mentioned earlier, on the VA Commissioner on Care, with his usual candor, relentless criticism, and demands for our veterans. Michael Blecker, thank you for your leadership and for organizing us together today. Thank you.
Well, I'm very humbled and honored, really, to have Speaker Pelosi, both a friend and, of course, and a colleague, and really a dedicated advocate. And we like to say she always has our back, which, for a community-based organization, you rest on your reputation among the vets you serve. So they always say, well, as long as you're the real deal, and as Swords of Plowshares have been able to get that respect from the vets we serve, it's sort of like our respect goes to someone that always has our back, in the community. And it's just been we're really fortunate. I feel very, 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 very lucky. I'm also very happy to have Chairman Takano here as well, and really some important policy of that you're proposing that actually has an incredibly rich history that Speaker Pelosi just hit upon. I mean, this stuff goes way back. And really gets to I think the core of what it means to sacrifice and to put your life on the line, and how you really need to have that support. So veterans have been fighting for these kind of things for years and years. And we know about issues around Agent Orange, et cetera. But I remember the issues around veterans who were exposed to the atomic bomb blast and had to fight like hell just to get all their medical problems for having been, just exposed to the atomic blast in the 50s, right? Just to get that radiation connection. But it's always, the veterans really have to push. But each generation of vets, I think, learns from the previous generation. That's why we've, I think, had increasing support. The other thing I just want to say quickly, there are really, Speaker Pelosi has been a champion for veterans on these big national issues, right? I mean, it's just really clear facts. He stood up and made sure the VA had adequate care for mental health and housing and all the other, primary healthcare needs, to make sure it's a primary healthcare system of care that should be preserved. And she's really fought that battle for years. And, having these, having a voice, right? And also being open to all the veteran service organizations that really stay on top of this issue has been crucial. She has these quarterly service meetings, but she has been a champion, and that's really demonstrated throughout, just her fighting to get some of these bills passed. And sometimes they don't, that bill passed, you don't even realize what that means, but it does end up in the community where it's most needed. And I think that's why we've been able to address issues really around poverty, really keeping vets from falling into poverty, helping vets climb out of it. Have been some of the bills that you helped create, some of the systems so the VA has more resources and can help with things like rental subsidies, right? And housing and wraparound care. They never would have those resources, but for the fight that you fought back in the day with American Legion, DAV, and all those veterans, they understood how important that is to actually have a system of care that sinks into the community where it's most needed. So I just want to really acknowledge all that at the national level. And of course, at the local level, Speaker Pelosi, I remember her coming to our housing programs, in the 1990s, right? And just like supporting all the support we did, and just talking to the vets who were in the program, wanting to know from them, is this program for real? You're getting something out of it? And she was always, she always had that rapport and wanted that rapport, because I think she understood that informs your work, your wisdom, really taking it all the way up and down. So anyway, just saying that's been great. And I think as a result, there's been a lot of coordinated care at the VA. Some of the resources, some of the direction, that's what we have to really fight to preserve. And Speaker Pelosi has had a commitment to ward off the bad actors and save the VA from privatization, and recognize how important it is when you send young men and women off to war. You better have a system of care for them when they come back. And it really is a true cost of war. So I think we're all on the same page. We have to champion that healthcare system. We have to recognize that the stress of war is deep and is wide, and it doesn't go away. And we really need a sound system of care. We can make a difference if we really make that commitment, and we have. So I'm excited by just the most recent round of this legislation. Looks really good. We have and what it means for long-term care and wellness. We have the Guard and Reserve GI Bill Act. It makes good sense. I'm not surprised it's a broad support across the aisle. How could it not be, right? So treating service members with respect and dignity, it's a no-brainer. I think the important Ensuring Veterans Smooth Transition Act is exactly what we need, right? To give vets a chance to get right into the healthcare system, and to recognize that, these terrible, some of the suicide, number of vets who commit suicide is very tragic and super sad. But we also know that those vets who are, once they're enrolled in the healthcare system, the suicide rate drops way down. If they're in the system, they're much more likely to get care. They're much more likely not to commit suicide. And that's one of the most great protections we have, is to make sure there's no break in that transition. So I think that's going to really pay off down the road. And of course, just what you talked about, the Comprehensive Toxic Act. And again, that covers years and years. And I remember just struggling with issues around DU, right? Depleted uranium, and how that was used in previous wars and current wars, and how that the effects of that exposure, and how vets had to fight for that's really caused health problems. So this Comprehensive Toxic Act comes on the back of this long, really history of fighting for what's right, and it's critical to prevent further suffering. So I'm really pleased that we can support that. So if you will, maybe I'll just go ahead and open it up to some questions. Can I do that? Is that okay?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So some of these questions were sent in advance. So let me start with Courtney Ellington, who's the CEO of One Vet, One Voice. Where are you, Courtney?
Here I am.
Okay, great. And again, Courtney is a local fighter for veterans' rights. So welcome, Courtney. Why don't you go ahead and share with us your question?
Okay, first of all, I would like to say thank you, Michael Blecker. Thank you, Kevin Ortiz, Dan Burnell, Madam Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and Chairman Takano for being here today. My question is, why is training not included in the amendment number 152? Guard and Reserve members are deployed stateside for disasters and state emergencies. Why are federal active duty orders only included in the Guard and Reserve Bill Party Act? The original document include training, active military service, inactive training, and general duty for which basic pay is warranted.
Mhm. Chairman?
Microphone back on. Courtney, here's my response. The active duty training is included starting in 2025, and inactive duty is included starting in 2031. All days of training that take place before these days will be counted once the ADT and the IDT portions take effect. Now, the reason for this staggered approach is, one, to allow VA time to prepare for the additional students who will become eligible, and two, manage the costs associated with the significant expansion of benefits. Let me just state activations are not counted, as it is not feasible to give governors the ability to activate units for reasons outside the control or interest of the administration, while allowing that time to count for federal benefits. So anyway, does that answer your question?
Yes, it answered my question. So basically, if they get deployed federally, like overseas, is that what count toward the education?
Actually, it's better than that under the Parity Act. It's not. That's what some of our colleagues would like to keep it at, only deployments overseas. No, every day in uniform is going to count. So if you know that the tempo for the training tempo for reservists and guardsmen and women have increased. We've used them increasingly since 9/11, right? I mean, the Guard and Reserve used to be places where people, hid out, or, that's what they did during the Vietnam War. It was kind of a safe haven, right? That wasn't true after 9/11. And you know what? We've changed we've changed toward using these units more and more. They're deployed more and more. And you know what? They have to train more and more. They're spending more time in training. And if you're in certain kinds of like elite units, special units, you may be training even, more than, even more. So every day in uniform is going to count, not just basic training, not just the school you're going to. And what is that going to mean? It means that guard units and reserve units, the members of those units are going to be able to make much faster progress toward earning their GI Bill benefits. That's the whole intent behind this bill. And, it was a very difficult bill to vote against. I know the speaker came down herself and spoke on the bill. I know she whispered into the ear of Mike Levin. She said, why in the heck are they opposing this bill? Because everybody has a guard unit in their state, or even some districts. So anyway, we appreciate the work that the Guard and Reserve do, and every day in uniform should count.
If I just may add to your answer, Mr. Takano, he's more of a gentleman than I am of a lady. I'll say this: we promise our veterans that in all that we do, we will strive to do everything in a bipartisan way. As you referenced your question, I was reminded of the substitute that the Republicans had on the floor, which greatly reduced what the opportunity was for our veterans. And to hear them speak on the floor against this was just appalling. That's why when I went to the floor to speak, I was like, it's unbelievable. You would think this would be almost automatic. Now, it is true that you don't want to overpromise. You want to be able to deliver on what it is we're putting out there and to be well organized in doing it as we go along. But for them to, now we said, how many votes did we get? 60 Republicans?
I think 61.
So that means 2/3 of the Republicans voted against the bill. Again, we want more. We want to do this in a bipartisan way, but
Madam Speaker, I'm corrected. It was 68 votes. And we would hope the Senate will pass a robust or the identical language. But, they did have a substitute bill, which would have restricted, as Chelsea was afraid of, would have restricted it. And that just goes to, that's a reflection of their leadership. Their leadership would have put forward a much different bill. And thank goodness Nancy Pelosi is the speaker, because we put down the strongest possible bill, but realistic. And we did it realistically. And we staggered the implementation so that we could keep the costs in line. And the bill's paid for. The bill's paid for. So I think it's gonna be awfully hard for the Senate to resist doing the right thing for our veterans, for our guardsmen and our reservists.
In all of the bills that we talked about, including honoring our pact, we want them to be for that too. But when you say 68 voted for it, more than 140, nearly 150 voted against it. It's just hard to believe, unless you heard their speeches on the floor, which didn't make any sense or share our value in this regard. But again, we always are striving for bipartisanship. Michael?
Thank you. Maybe you can
Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you. Let's move to a question from Suzanne Gordon, who's really done some groundbreaking work in her work as an investigative journalist and as an author and a writer. So she's written. She's also currently director of the Veterans Healthcare Policy Institute, and her question relates to the implementation of the transition, the Smooth Transition Act. Suzanne, where are you?
Right there.
I don't see her.
Okay. Suzanne is right there, Michael. She's with us.
Very good.
And I just want to say that we're honored that she's with us and that she's been with us some of our in-person meetings with the vets as well. She's been an intellectual resource to us for a long time. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you very much, Speaker Pelosi and Chairman Takano. I'm just so honored to be here, and I just have to correct you, Michael. I wish I was the director of the VHPI, the Veterans Healthcare Policy Institute. I want to be the director of the world. Unfortunately, I'm not. I'm a senior policy analyst, although I, along with some other of my colleagues, was a co-founder of VHPI, and we are very supportive. And I know Chairman Takano knows this. Of the eVest bill, we wrote early about it. It's so crucial. The other bills, obviously the burn pit bill, really, I mean, how outrageous can it be that we refuse to pay for this? But my question really has to do, and my deep concern, and it's hard to overestimate the depth of my concern about this issue. If we bring veterans, service members who become veterans more effectively and smoothly into the VA, if by a stroke of something, we get the burn pit issue attended to, that means more veterans in the VA. We have a huge suicide crisis and mental health crisis, and yet President Trump initiated a deeply misguided human resources modernization project that tragically, I believe, I hate to say this, is not being well managed or reversed by VA leadership. And I have been doing research on this and have heard from people all over the country. I can't tell you, as a researcher and as a journalist, you know, when you call somebody up who you think isn't going to answer your phone call or poo-poo what you're saying, and they erupt and they talk to you and you kind of can't shut them up, and then you call the next one. There is a huge human resources crisis right now in the VA, huge. They can't hire. Human resources people are so upset that they're leaving. Chiefs of staff initiated an effort to try to get VA leadership to pay attention to this. And it is really a disaster. And I guess my question is, and this really has a lot to do with mental health. I mean, suicide prevention coordinators, psychologists now. And what, if we can't hire, you know, then people are going to be forced to go into the private sector, but the private sector can't take anybody. I mean, you know, UCSF just closed down all its primary care clinics to new patients. I don't know if you're aware of this, Speaker Pelosi, but you can't go to UCSF for primary care if you're not there already. So they can't take these vets. And if we can't hire in the VA, and we can't, you know, expedite this, and if we have central hiring practices that are no longer at the local level. I did a piece on this for the American Prospect. So I guess my question really is to Chairman Takano, to you, Speaker Pelosi, how can we get the VA to pay attention to this urgently enough? And get an investigation into this and get a group of people to meet about this and solve this problem, because it cannot go on any longer, or all the enormous work that you put so much energy into doing is going to be for naught, because we can't. How can you bring people into a system that doesn't have enough staff?
Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for that question. And I'm very much aware of the issue you're speaking about. I know you've been in touch with my staff recently about vacancies and the effects of the VA's HR modernization effort. I've heard concerns similar to yours on my own visits to VA facilities when I've met with employees at VA facilities recently. So I want you to know the committee has been following up on these issues with VA. A lot has been going on behind the scenes, and we are planning a full committee oversight hearing later this year to examine these very issues. You know, Michael Blecker, I'm sure will remember, I don't know if he remembers the whole thing, but I certainly remember Michael Blecker's tenure in being on the Commission on Care. And though the Commission on Care ultimately came up with recommendations that he and I both rejected, it was interesting that both the Republican and Democratic designated co-chairs of the committee really pushed back on one of the more extreme Republican members of the committee back then, when he said that we're not firing enough people. And he said, they both said, look, you can't fire your way to excellence. And both co-chairs were stunned, and this is like 6-7 years ago, at how poorly resourced VA was in the HR area. And I can tell you, I know these HR specialists are very difficult to hang on to because they sort of know all of the hiring policies across the federal government, and they get taken by other agencies. So, but this idea that they were going to move these HR people to the VISN level, I agree with you, has had some very, very bad consequences. Some of which is just people can't get their questions answered about benefits. So, but what I can tell you is that this is an issue. Adequate staffing at VA has long been something that has been a top priority of mine. Back when we passed the Choice Act, I made sure that the speaker will remember this, that we created 1,500 new graduate medical education positions at VA. And in Build Back Better, we added another 500 residency positions at VA. And, we're breathing life back into it somehow. And I'm going to make sure that we keep those residency positions in whatever package, emerges. VA plays a critical role in the national infrastructure for training new healthcare professionals. Now, I will say, Suzanne, VA represented to me under the previous administration, under Dr. Stone, who was the acting, the acting Undersecretary for Health, that they were using emergency hiring procedures and expedited hiring procedures, and that they were taking advantage of the fact that so many health professionals in the private sector weren't able to work, and that VA was able to pick up on these folks. And that's part of what my oversight is going to be, is to understand how many of these people are still with VA, how many have we retained, just how many did we hire. I've not been able to get those answers. I'm hoping that the answers that we were able to increase our staffing in very critical provider areas. So rest assured, we're on top of this issue, and I'm going to be dedicating some oversight resources to get into the bottom of all this.
If I just may add to what the distinguished chairman said, the Secretary of VA, the Veterans Administration, Dennis McDonough, is very sensitive on this issue. We had him come in immediately to talk to us about the burn pits, honoring our PAC legislation, and every step of the way it was, we have to be able to get it done. Again, as I said to Courtney earlier, in terms of overpromising, what is the timetable and what is the absorptive capacity of the organization to take on these responsibilities in light of staffing and expertise and the rest. But I think that, Mr. Chairman, you may agree, and Michael, you may have seen well, he went to LA last time, but he has been out to San Francisco Bay Area when he was Chief of Staff to Barack Obama to talk about our homeless vets. So he's a very hands-on person, but again, not to overpromise unless we can build our infrastructure to accommodate this. And as we've done more things with the Deborah Sampson Act and how we meet the needs of women veterans and some of the other issues that were priorities that we are establishing, we have to make sure that we can cover it in a way. Once, when I was in one of the hearings years ago with the VSOs, it was made clear to us that if every mental health care provider who was in school at that time, every single one of them, upon graduation, they would all be scooped up by the VA and still need more. So we have to be developing more training and all the rest for folks who imagine there would be none left for any other aspect of suicide, mental health issues. We needed everybody. We didn't get everybody, but we needed everybody, and we needed more. So again, with our veterans issues, as we look at them in their universe, we have to look at them in the perspective of the greater society about what we need to be building so that we can call upon that for our veterans. Next question, Michael.
Thanks, yeah. How about Raymond Wong, Commander of the Chinatown Post 4618? You have a comment regarding the PAC Act, Commander Wong?
Commander Wong. Up there. No. You're muted, Commander. Unmute. Press that unmute button. You see it there? That red thing. How are we coming?
I believe Commander Wong might not have heard us. Commander Wong, can you hear us?
Who's next?
Yes,
Oh, there we go. Bravo, bravo.
this is Commander Wong.
Hi.
Can everybody?
Yes.
Yes, my question is first of all, thank you, Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Chairman Mark Takano for hosting this roundtable. I'm honored to be part of it. My question is, it's time to protect veterans who serve and protected us. As your constituent, I urge you to take immediate action to ensure our veterans, past, present, and future, receive the benefit and services that they earn and deserve through their service to our country. Congress must pass the comprehensive and overdue support troops, the costs of war, and honor our PAC Act of 2021. The failure to act will have devastating consequences. Too many brave men and women who serve are already sick and dying. They need our help now. We demand legislation that guarantee life-saving care to those heroes. Additionally, in World War II, radiation, and Vietnam War, Agent Orange. In the Gulf War oil fire in Iraq and Afghanistan, they were exposed to burn pits and other environmental hazards. Toxic exposure to our troops has been synonymous with service for more than 100 years. But every time we're faced with it, we act as if it never happened. I'd like to thank Chairman Takano for sponsoring HR 3967, the PAC Act of 2021, promised to address comprehensive toxin acts of 2021. That concludes my question.
Well, Mark, thank you, Commander Wong, and I join you in commending Chairman Takano. I'm going to yield to him, but first I want to say it's these toxic sites and all are so self-evidently dangerous to our troops. And as you said, it's the cost of war. So we want you just to close the door. That's some noise coming out of the kitchen for my kids. But here's the thing. Some of the challenges that our men and women in uniform face are from like bad, dirty water. Camp Lejeune, terrible water there. Our troops, it can cause cancer and all to have this bad, dirty water. And in addition to that, their family, not only do they become susceptible to cancer, their children, and then it's a legacy in their family. So you couldn't be more right, Commander. We have to, whatever the exposure is, we owe it to our families to address them, but we also should prevent them. Mr. Takano?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, I completely, I'm you know, very gratified by Commander Wong's support of the PACT Act. And As I've said before, Congress and VA have been slow to act on toxic exposure because of the cost. But in Speaker Pelosi, we have a leader in the Congress who completely understands that toxic exposure is a cost of war. It's no less a cost of war than body armor or uniforms or ammunition. Our responsibility to take care of our veterans when illnesses that show up because of toxic exposure show up years and years later, our commitment doesn't diminish. Toxic exposure is a cost of war. The Blue Water Navy bill was a massive victory, but we still have a lot more to do. And there's a lot of toxic exposure related to Agent Orange that is addressed in the PACT Act. Right now, we have a disability benefit claims process that is cumbersome and places the burden to prove toxic exposure on veterans themselves. And it's also a broken promise. When we sent our service members in harm's way, we made a pact to care for them and pay for that care. And when they come home, we haven't always followed through. And my PACT Act, my our PACT Act will change all of that. And with the Speaker's help, I'm confident we're going to pass this bipartisan legislation in this Congress. Madam Speaker, I just got a note that we picked up another Republican co-sponsor today. There are already Republicans on the bill. And if they're never presented a choice, which if there was a Republican speaker, you can bet that the bill would be much, much stripped down. But because we have Speaker Pelosi leading us, we put a strong bill on the floor, and it's people are even Republicans are hard pressed. But even so, a majority of them probably will vote against this. But I hope not. So what will the PACT Act do? It'll provide VHA priority Group 6 health care for certain toxic exposed veterans. It'll streamline the VA's review process for establishing toxic exposure presumptions. It'll concede exposure to airborne hazards and burn pits based on locations and dates of service. Our veterans aren't going to have to prove that because we're going to just concede that exposure. We're going to establish a presumption of service connection for 23 respiratory illnesses and cancers related to burn pit airborne hazard exposure. And we're going to create a presumption of exposure to radiation. Michael Blecker, we're not done with those veterans that were exposed to radiation decades ago. They participated, our veterans participated in cleanup activities in Palomar, Spain, and in Awatak Atoll. We're going to expand Agent Orange exposure presumption to veterans who served in Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. And we're going to improve data collection between VA and the Department of Defense and require VA to provide standardized training to improve toxic exposure-based disability claims adjudications, just to name a few. Well, with the support of 9 service organizations, VSOs, advocates John Stewart and John Field, and over 70 co-sponsors, we have the momentum. And Congress just needs to find the will to do what's right. And I know we're gonna get it through the House with, I believe, a huge bipartisan vote.
I hope that it is bipartisan, and that's what we hope. This will cost about, we're waiting for a CBO score, but it could be as much as $500 billion. A small price to pay, in my view, for the health and well-being of our veterans. And again, if you take Suzanne's question and Mark's description of the bill, you see that we are reducing the need for staffing to accommodate all of the proof of this, that, and the other thing. Just accept the presumption. If you were there and you're diagnosed, we owe you. We owe you. If I just may say, our veterans organizations have always been the source of so many good ideas. The veterans of World War I, and the American Legion very much a part of it, were the ones who proposed the GI Bill, the GI Bill of Rights, which was signed by Franklin Roosevelt. The war was still on. They proposed it knowing how they were not treated appropriately, and they did, and that GI Bill was so important. And the GI Bill for the 21st century was springing from our veteran service organizations about how we need to make opportunities available for our vets. And it was also about recruitment and re-upping, because there were good things that would be there for our veterans as we built a future with their help worthy of their sacrifice. So we're very proud of what has been done. Michael, you've been so much a part of all of that, and I thank you. But again, understand, this is not a conversation. This is an ongoing, purposeful coming together so that we can do the right thing by the legislation. And I hope we do get strong Republican support. I think that in the Senate, Senator Tester is working on this in the Veterans Affairs Committee. That would be a Democrat as the chairman, but hopefully, and by the way, we can only do so much by internal maneuvering. The outside mobilization makes all the difference in the world. So know your power on this, Commander Wong, Courtney, all of you, know your power in this. And as Mark said, we have John Stewart and others who have been active in service-related challenges that we have had, whether it was 9/11 that day, after that, and in service for our national security. So we need to have a big outside mobilization, and that will make it inevitable in a bipartisan way. Do we have time for one more question, Michael?
Well, I have a couple questions from Janessa. Yeah, Goldbeck, the CEO of Ed Voice Foundation.
Yeah, hi. I'll just stick to one since we're running short on time, but Madam Speaker, Chair Takano, thank you so much for being here today. And Michael, thanks for moderating. My name is Janessa. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I'm the CEO of Vet Voice Foundation, which is the C3 arm of Vote Vets. And off the bat, Chairman, as a gay woman, I just want to thank you so much for your recent letter to Secretary Austin asking for the historical review on LGBT service members. It means a lot, and I really encourage you to be as proactive as possible about codifying legislative protections for trans and non-binary service members and veterans, as I have no doubt they'll continue to come under attack. My question is for both of you, but Chair Takano, you've talked a lot in the past about approaching your VA work through the lens of VA 2030. You've both committed to making the VA the best, most modern version of itself for all veterans. And so in addition to the work you've already accomplished, which I thank you so much for, what other areas do you see as opportunities for improvement to make the VA best suited to meet the needs of today's increasingly diverse veterans?
Well, thank you for mentioning the letter that Jackie Spear, I, and Chairman of Armed Services Committee Smith wrote to Secretary Austin to ask his historians to do a look back at the discriminatory practices, not just during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but going further back. I'll tell you where this comes from. There was Madam Speaker, you remember a good friend of ours who passed away in the last couple of years, Blake Byrne, and he told me about his service in the 60s and how there were methods and maneuvers used to separate him from service, but it wasn't a court martial. It wasn't other than honorable discharge. Was some sort of medical discharge. There's just so many different ways in which LGBTQIA service members have suffered humiliations and trauma. And I have a bill that it's being stymied by the lack of Republican support, and it really is a bill that is not just in my jurisdiction, it's in armed services. So I'm going to need to do a bigger push there. I wrote to Secretary Austin as a kind of a fallback position because I wanted to really create a commission, a presidential level commission, where LGBTQIA service members and veterans could testify. As you know, there's so many people that are so traumatized, and even though we live in a much more out society, there are people from other decades for whom it's just so painful, and I think they ought to have an opportunity to have their records be part of an official record. And I like to say that we can't reconcile until we reckon. And the reckoning in a sort of peace commission, a kind of truth commission, it's not a peace commission, but truth commission is what I would ultimately hope for. But as an interim step, I hope that the historians will start to build an official, Department of Defense record. Beyond the LGBTQ community, as far as making the VA a more welcoming place, I'm hoping to make sure to stand up very soon the Women Veterans Task Force that we had in the last Congress. This ranking member, for whatever reason, they're being much more difficult. We had a tremendous staffer in Andrea who led the staff work for that. I mean, she was so amazing. I'm hoping we can get that up before this Congress ends, so that we can have Ms. Brownlee, just do some more great work in terms of legislating for women veterans. And there's a lot of oversight going to be going on with Deborah Sampson, but we've got a lot of stuff going on in MST and further work there, more oversight to make sure that the VA is fully implementing, all the policies which will make the VA a welcoming place for women as well. Now, unfinished business, there's a lot of it. As you know, there was discrimination involved in African-American and other veterans of color, Latino veterans, not being able to fully utilize the GI Bill after they came back from World War II, not being able to buy homes because of the discriminatory ways in which the GI Bill, the GI lending went forward. And so we're looking at some kind of redress of that. And that's being teed up right now with my staff. So I'm sure I'm missing some of this, but discharge upgrades. So discharge upgrades for both minority service members and LGBTQ members, even though the tremendous leadership of Nancy Pelosi and the Congress in 2010, they overturned Don't Ask, Don't Tell. As you know, the rate at which discharge upgrades have been occurring has been painfully slow. And of course, how humiliating it is for a veteran, an LGBTQ veteran, to have to go through a very cumbersome discharge upgrade, how traumatizing that is. We're looking at all the different ways in which these discharges were disproportionately inflicted upon minorities, especially women of color. Women of color were affected by LGBTQ, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, even if they weren't gay, even if they weren't lesbian, they were affected. And that's a whole nother story that Andrea kind of educated me about. But I understand that we've got a Pappas and Lauren Underwood bill that we're kind of merging together to address this discharge issue.
Well, the discharge issue also relates to other, just Don't Ask, Don't Tell another time when we're together. I'll tell you about how we got that done. But the fact is that it did then open the door to the discharge upgrade and the rest of that, but also how families are treated on bases and the rest, marriage equality, issues like that. The current administration trying to change the policy that bans gender affirmation surgery. So there are issues. So when we're talking about our outside mobilization, it certainly is our veterans and those who care about the national security of our country, and we all take an oath to protect and defend that. It's also our equal rights community in terms of LGBTQ. It's also the environmental community. I've been speaking to environmental groups the last few days about the burn pits. I said, this is an environmental issue. You should be right in there with it. And they are. It's an environmental issue, as well as an unfair issue in terms of a health issue for our veterans. So we have some collaborations to do with other groups to call attention to the injustices of this and how we make it right. But it takes money, and we have to pay for it. And we think this is for the money that was spent to give a tax cut to the wealthiest people in our country, $2 trillion, or 83% of benefits went to the top 1%. We could do all the burn pit. We can do so many other things that are necessary for our veterans and of much more value to the well-being of the American people. I thank all of you. My understanding is we're going to get our photograph taken now. Let's get down to the truly important. We're going to get our picture taken to a record that we were bear witness that we're all here this day. Hopefully sometime soon we can all be together in person, and our distinguished chairman will once again honor us with his presence. He did today and informed us with his wisdom, his commitment. We're very proud of him. He commands the respect of our members, and when he speaks about these issues, they listen, they follow. And again, Jackie Spear, thank you for mentioning her as chair of the subcommittee on Armed Services Committee that deals with personal matters. She has been relentless on these issues as well. Thank you all very much for your leadership, for your friendship, for your candor in all of this. And Michael Blecker, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for so much.